I'm going to get us started. Thank you all for being here. Really happy to see
Yeah.
some of you twice in 1 week, sometimes since last week. But it's really great to have you here again. And I'm very excited to have LaKesha with us again, who I think most of you now know from one or more of the Zooms she's done with us. And she and I said in the email I sent, she and I talked earlier this week about what to think about and talk about. And I think she's got some great ideas about thinking about next steps, but within a structure that will help it to feel comfortable and not like, oh my gosh, we're in this world and I don't know what's going on and how am I supposed to decide anything. A lot calmer, which is LaKesha in general. She helps us to keep it focused. So LaKesha, I'm going to turn it over to you, and
Okay.
thanks again for being here.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me again. I always enjoy my time with you all. It is refreshing and nurturing. So thank you so much for having me with you again. Like Linda said, we're going to do some exploring of how we might start thinking about moving forward while holding uncertainty. So I will present a couple of tools and then we'll try exploring with them. But before we do that, those of you who've been with me before know I like to give us a minute to get grounded. And usually that is I'm usually asking you to think about deep breaths and those kinds of things. So today we'll do, instead of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, we'll do 3, 2, 1. And so just kind of get comfortable with yourself in your space, get relaxed. We're going to do hopefully lots of interacting with each other in the next hour. And so as you're working to be with us, look around your space right now and think of 3 things that you can see. Doing some deep breaths, maybe in between each one, naming it. I'm in a junky space, so you can't see that right now. So I'm looking at all the things. And now how about looking at 2 things that you can physically touch in your space right now with some nice deep breaths in between there. And what is one thing in your space that you can smell or taste? One thing you can smell or taste. Some of you also know I believe in fidget objects, and so I'm going to ask if you have attention in and out objects near you. If not, and you're able to get them, please do so. Or if you have pen and paper, a way to doodle, a way to color, a way to draw, I invite you to get that now. We'll have a couple of activities that ask you to write, but you don't really have to. So if you are able to have something near you, just to help keep your attention with you. Also, if something feels hard or challenging or re-stimulating, you'll be able to have something right there next to you to fidget with. And we also know it helps with processing, doing those things. So today, we are going to quickly frame VUCA and VUCA Prime. My hope is that as we go through the hour, you'll see where some of the tools can fit in with VUCA Prime. The tools we'll look at are the feelings of it all, of course, opportunities, and knowns. And just thinking about our feelings as tools, of course, as a tool, looking at opportunities and how we might use those opportunities as ways to start thinking about creating new pathways of moving forward, and what do we know, and how can we move forward with what we know. If we have time, we'll do a quick thinking about what it might mean to reimagine some things. About half past the hour, if you've been with me before, you know I believe even in our calls, we need to do some stretching. In longer sessions we stand up about every half an hour. So because the sitting is not the healthiest thing for us to do for super long periods of time. So about half past the hour, we'll take a 2-minute break and then we'll come back. And we won't answer all of the questions. I just like to name that and hold that, but Linda and I are always here to continue the conversation, and my contact information is at the very end, always here to continue exploring and being a thought partner. So most of you know I work for Seattle University, and I'm currently the middle school success coordinator. I oversee all of our mentoring programs, and it's been very interesting making the shift to e-mentoring. I am a mama of a grown-up, 22-year-old, an auntie. I love books. Being by the water is my healing space, and I don't live too far, so it's nice to be able to still take walks and get to the water. And I like to knit, but I can only make a scarf and a little baby hat. So that's who LaKesha is. And we're going to jump right in and look at what VUCA and VUCA Prime are. They are leadership models, actually, that really work pretty well if you're thinking about communications with teams.
Hi. Has Dad told you about what's going on?
Well, into other spaces. So VUCA.
Okay, you can put me on speaker if you want. I don't care.
Was introduced by Bob Johansen in 2007. VUCA Prime was introduced by Bob Johansen in 2007. And it was kind of his way of flipping what VUCA stands for, which was introduced in 1987. And these concepts were trying to help leaders corral their teams and lead with some sort of model. So VUCA Prime, or VUCA, I'm sorry, the V is for volatility. So things are upended, the unexpected has happened, and I think we can all agree that in this COVID era, especially when it first hit, things were really upended and we just didn't know what to expect. So we support in that space by having grace, building in resources, using resources to help us navigate. The U is uncertainty. So there's a lack of information or there's little information and we don't really know what to expect, which kind of freezes us. So we don't really know how we're moving forward. So in those spaces, we support by seeking information. As information becomes available to us, we start to disseminate it to others to help make sure that folks have at least some working knowledge as much as we can have. The C is complexity. The waters are murky. We don't know how to make a decision. Things are just, it's part of that uncertainty, right? It's hard to make a decision because we don't really know. The waters aren't clear enough for us to see. So in that space, we are supporting things by identifying resources and patterns. We want to take a breath. We want to interrupt that sense of urgency and start to see where are patterns that are developing that I might be able to work in and with. And A is for ambiguity. We don't know what we don't know, and till it smacks us in the face, we just won't know. Things are very unclear. And we support that by naming the complexity and looking for ways to restructure and rebuild. I'm going to go through VUCA Prime and then I'm going to ask Linda what she is seeing in chat. VUCA Prime, so what Bob Johansen did was say, what if we think about these challenges slightly differently? What if we renamed the letters? And so what he did was say, what if we saw V as vision, and seeing through the turbulence and looking towards what our end goal might be? So in your programming, what might be not necessarily an end goal, but what is something that you'd like to work towards or start to see achieved as you start coming back, as your state starts opening up, as you start thinking about what programming might look like when you can have 10 youth in your space and then maybe 15 youth in your space. So we support that the same way as we do with volatility. U is for understanding. So taking the time that's needed to really analyze and learn. And again, part of that is about interrupting that narrative of urgency, which really has us, urgency typically causes us to be in a reactive, or we just move, we just go, and we're not really thinking things through because we need that quick answer. And there are times when that, where we really need to make a decision swiftly. But there are other times, more times than I think we give ourselves credit for, where we can at least just pause, take a few deep breaths, and regroup. C is for clarity. So we're leveraging what we do know. Typically, in spaces, as time starts to move on, things start to become a little clearer. We start to see a known. We know that all states are in the different spaces of opening up. We know that we will be looking at some point coming back together, working with our youth. So looking for patterns and resources again, and how those might help move us forward. The A in the VUCA Prime model is for agility. So starting, and this is something that I think takes practice and really a lot of intention, is to grow the ability to be comfortable with choosing from ambiguous alternatives. As humans, I think we often like, nope, give me the clear cut, I get grape juice or I get apple juice. I get red wine, I get white wine, right? But then you start throwing in things that maybe feel a little more ambiguous, and you're like, well, just choose it for me. I don't know. That doesn't work, right? Our brains start to have a little more of a challenging time with that. And so if we can work with intention to say, well, this is half of a known, and I kind of know this, what can I do with that? Can I learn to be okay and comfortable in that space? And that's not something that we're born with. That's something that we have to intentionally practice and work on. I am going to pause and ask Linda what she's seeing in chat.
Well, I'm finding out what Renee likes to drink for wine. But other than that, nothing really. Does anybody have something you want to say in the chat?
Or come off mute?
Mm-hmm. I wrote that I just love this transition from VUCA to VUCA Prime and how it reframes it. It's really astounding. Yeah.
And I think one of the cool things is, if you think about this VUCA acronym, you can totally take it and make it applicable to where you are, to your space, to the youth you work with. You can say, what do we want V to stand for us? Does it stand for victory? You know, and really kind of rethink what that might mean. So that's some fun in it for me as well. Oh, the feelings of it all. Briefly, before we're going to do an activity, and I want to say this now up front, the activity we're going to do will bring up feelings, because I'm going to ask you to think about some feelings and emotions from this time. My invitation is to be as deep with yourself as you'd like to be, but that will still allow you to be present for the rest of the call. And I'm just putting that out there now. So briefly, 3 things. as adults, we really want to stay in reflective space and be working on knowing, identifying, sitting with our emotions and our feelings. That is one of the tools that we can use to be in a space to help transition when we're back with our youth. If we can continue to work that muscle of it's okay to not feel great right now, it's okay to name this, it's okay to stay reflective, and be honest about how I'm feeling and what's causing that, we're going to be better able to work through what it means to have to pick from ambiguous alternatives and how we feel about that. We're going to be better able to look at and work with the knowns, because we'll feel more comfortable saying, this really sucks. And this really is triggering for me because of this. And this is how I might work through this. So we really want to hold that. Just a reminder about being optimistic versus positive, that, oftentimes in points of crises, we're here, be positive, stay positive, you have to be positive. Oh, you're not being very optimistic, are you? And holding that optimistic is really saying, it sucks right now, things are really not good, I don't know when they will be, but I believe on the other side of this, that will come out, that there will be another side. We won't be in this space forever. Where positive is, I had a piece of chocolate today, that was the only good thing in my day. Renee, whatever that wine is, you had a glass of it and it really brought you through your day, right? So finding the small things that bring you joy. What I want to share is part of next, allowing the negative feelings and remembering that you don't have to stay in a place of positivity all the time. You get to feel down. You get to be angry and anxious. You get to feel like this is awful. Will this ever end? It doesn't make you a negative person. It doesn't mean that you're not holding reality or that you'll never have a positive moment again. It doesn't mean that you don't think that there will be another side to this. It's actually very healthy for us to name and sit with those negative feelings. And sometimes we might even need to have conversations with them. We might need to say like, wow, hello, fear, you creeped right on in there and you came for a visit. And I noticed that you came when I heard about furloughs in my department possibly happening. I'm not sure how long you'll visit this time, but I can work through this by increasing my meditation practice or by taking a walk and by continuing to name that you're here. And when you leave, I will feel relaxed, but just really naming that. And you can write that, you can draw that, you can have that conversation with your teddy bear or your animals, but really just naming those things for yourself and giving yourself permission for that. I want to ask if anything came up in chat that Linda wants to share, or if anybody wants to share anything.
I think it's interesting that Kay said she started a book last night that's very positive. That's been a positive experience. And other people are saying, I haven't even been able to read since this whole thing started. So that's a really great, in my mind, just example of what you're talking about.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I was having that problem for a while, actually, that I was trying to start books and like nothing was clicking. And at the time I was like, it's because of the pandemic. And then I realized I picked out a bunch of crappy books from the library. So to find one out of the 10 books that I borrowed that I'm actually excited about was great.
Yeah, that's really awesome to go along with a really great wine, right, Kay? Yep, of course. This is a really simple tool of validation that you can use with yourself, you can use with youth, you can use with friends and family. And I learned it from a person whose name is Betty Peralta, and she's an infant mental health specialist. So she and I kind of engage sometimes on work for how to support young people when I'm training my SU students. So of course, there's this activity we're going to do, and then I'll explain the use of the tool, of course. And you'll see my asterisk note down here that it may bring up hard things, so please be sure to create space to explore, reflect, and work through if that should happen during our time today. So I'm going to invite you to think about your time and your experience in our current era of COVID. And I want you to think about that in terms of your roles. So are you a student and you work? Are you a parent? Do you have a partner at home? So what roles do you have? What work roles do you have? And then also thinking about your identities, how you identify, think about where you are in the country. So we're going to spend a couple of minutes thinking about your experiences and how you're feeling. And I want you during this time, and I'll just give us maybe about 60 or 90 seconds, and think about what emotions and feelings you're experiencing and when you're tending to experience them. So is it early in the day? Is it after 10 Zoom meetings in a row? When are you starting to feel those? Is it you're processing that night just before your head hits the pillow? So let's take about 1 minute and just kind of think about that. And I'll pull us back together for the next part in about 30 seconds. Okay. The next part of this activity is to ask you to think about some of the feelings that were coming up for you. To use this list, and you may have thought of some of these words. Some of these words you may say, yes, that's the word. So I invite you to keep the words that you came up with, but think about holding that experience that you're thinking about, holding those feelings, and maybe about 30 seconds, write down any of the feelings or emotions from this list or that you come up with on your own that really describe your experience during this time. Thank you so much. Now we're going to use the tool. We're going to use, of course, we're going to do some validating for ourselves. So it says the next minute or two. We're going to give ourselves 1 minute because we're getting close pretty close to our 2-minute stretch break. And you're going to say to yourself out loud, if possible, you can whisper it, but you want to be able to kind of hear yourself so that it sinks in a little bit. You're going to validate those feelings and emotions. You can type into the chat box some of those feelings and emotions if you wish. And each statement that you say, every time you say it, you're going to start with, of course. So it might sound like, of course you feel anxious. You're living during the time of a global pandemic full of uncertainty, and the human brain doesn't deal well with uncertainty. Okay, so you're going to look at those feelings and emotion words that you put, and you're going to give yourself some validation for that. And each time say, of course you feel nervous. And then why would that be? Of course you feel anxious. And why would that be? And we're going to do that give yourselves 1 minute to validate some of those feelings. You're going to validate for about 40 more seconds. In 10 seconds, I'm going to ask Linda if any feelings or emotion words came through the chat. Hey, Linda, did anyone share feelings or emotion words in the chat?
Yes, they did. We have tired.
Of course you're tired.
Yep.
Of
And people
course
described
you
things
are
too, but I'll
tired.
just give you the words. Tired, fatigued, stressed, obsessive, afraid, and confused.
Oh my gosh, of course you're confused. We don't have really any idea what's coming next. We didn't have tons of information when this came out. And the guidance that we're getting from leaders, be they local or otherwise, might not feel comforting for some folks. Of course you're fatigued. Your brain is going full time. Your emotions are heightened. Of course. Of course. Of course you're stressed. Of course. I am going to ask you to come off of mute or to share in chat what it felt like to spend just a few seconds thinking about the feelings and the emotions, and what it felt like to either hear that, of course, from my end or from your end. What did that feel like for you?
I think that the validation is really important and good to just like let the feelings be what they are, acknowledge that they make sense and that they exist instead of just trying to like move past them all the time.
Thank you.
I agree. And I just want to say thank you because I always kind of like put my own stuff aside because, you know, mom and leading librarians and stuff. And so like, yeah, you know what? I'm tired and anxious and it makes sense. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. So that's the timer telling me that we have a 2-minute stretch break. We'll come back in 2 minutes and pick back up. Stretch, get some water, do all the things in 2 minutes.
Change your background.
Play around, I know. Often I find, especially on my work computer, I just blend in and then I just am this weird little like funny shaped head. So,
You know, it's crazy how this all works. I'm going to try it on my iPad next time. Whoever said that, thank you. I can't remember who that was. Might have been Laura. I think Laura, because she's using her iPad. Yeah, people are saying, oh, I'm supposed to be breaking. I'm not looking at the chat. No,
yeah, no, when we come back, yeah.
not doing it.
No.
Not doing it.
Take your full break.
Yeah, really.
How do you put the background on?
Are you on a computer, laptop or something?
Computer.
Yeah, so if you're in Zoom and you go up to preferences, so usually that's like in the top menu bar. If you click on the name, I'm on a Mac, so I don't know if it's different if you're on a Windows. But like I see Zoom in my menu bar, and then I go down to preferences, and when that opens up, there's a virtual background option.
So I always just do it from the bottom.
Oh.
There's like a start next to start video or the video icon, the little up arrow. If you click on that, it's also there.
Who knew?
You can't see the rest of the stuff up there. You can find it.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
My pleasure.
All right.
I love learning something like that.
Isn't it
I'm
awesome?
spending way too much time making it harder than it needs to be.
All right. So Linda said some things came through chat. One of the questions I did have was, how might we, whoops, it's going the wrong way. How might that be beneficial, the Of Course tool in your work with your youth, or as you're thinking about moving forward? But just on that, the feelings and the Of Course tool, are there thoughts, questions? Why is this applicable? And Linda, you said there were a couple of things in chat, but you were on
I was
break.
waiting because we were on a break. Don't have to work during those 2 minutes.
Exactly.
So remembering that the feelings are valid is important. Free counseling. It was a relief to see other words, what other people were feeling. And someone had written heartbroken, and for all the loss that people were having. Somebody said, of course, you are heartbroken and grieved. Yes, now I'm reacting. There has been so much loss, right? So reacting to that. Somebody else wrote, I actually understand what being okay with not being okay means.
Awesome.
And it felt good to have a structure to validate my feelings, and it will be helpful to share with others.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing that out, everyone. And you can definitely, when things come up for you, my invitation is to not do the hold it under the water like a beach ball thing, because then you get really tired. Like right when you're in the water and you're trying to push something down, the longer you're trying to hold that ball down, the more tired your arms get. And sometimes you don't even realize after you've been holding it for so long that your arms are really doing a lot of work and that they're really tired until you let it up and your muscles are super sore. So just allowing yourself that space and that time, and knowing that as you're allowing yourself that space and that time, you are creating an ability to probably see opportunities where you hadn't seen them before, which is, the opportunities. Tool number 2, moving into how might we look at moving forward. So opportunities now, like, LaKesha, what the F? You are not serious. What are the opportunities? And I think there are a ton of opportunities, and I don't want to say this. My hope is that it doesn't sound like, well, you should be finding all the opportunities, because there's just something around every corner. If we're holding then we're able to say, this is really making me unhappy, or this is really re-stimulating me. This is really, causing my anxiety to rise up. And maybe not in the same breath, maybe not in the same day, but then you might be able to say, and this has given me an opportunity to explore new ways of working through my anxiety, or this is giving me an opportunity to think of new ways to engage with the youth as we start to come back. So my question for you, and you can put them in chat or come off of mute, is can you think of 2 opportunities that are presenting themselves to you right now, either with work or in your personal life? If you can't think of 2, can you think of 1?
Well, Amber said, and maybe Amber, you can expand, new ways to serve our patrons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so what we're finding is we've actually been able to this has been a great opportunity for us to actually look at our services and then realize who we're not reaching, and then coming up with creative ways to actually engage people. So we're like, oh, we still have the phone. We can reach people with a phone. We stopped doing this, but we can do phone service, I mean, for the littles, I was able to install like a dial a story, which seems really antiquated, but I love to call dial a story when I was a kid, and we implemented it immediately. It was really simple. Or, going to our local cable access program so we can do programs that way. I mean, things that we weren't doing before because we just were we're relying on people to come to us.
Mm-hmm.
So I see lots of opportunity. Also, I see a way to reschedule my whole library because we were stuck in our old ways. And so being able to be like, you know what, this is what's important. And we can say goodbye to the old and start to look at the new. So I see it as a rebirth opportunity, but
Awesome.
That's me. So I'm optimistic.
Thank you, Amber. Thank you. And I love Dial a Story. We did that all the time when I was a kid. Oh, we were so excited when the new story was on. Thank you for making my heart happy at that.
There are a lot more, so I'll read through sort of, and you can tell me when to stop or whatever.
Okay.
So new ways to communicate, more opportunities to support coworkers and teens, students who don't have internet access, a new outreach vehicle that can help reach them, video programming, facilitating in a virtual environment, spend more one-on-one time with my kids to understand learning needs, connecting with nature, spending a lot more time with my kids and programmers in the state, so both work and personal,
Awesome.
digital content, more ways to reach teen, communicate better with staff, just like a nurturing relationship.
Wonderful.
I'm like,
wonderful. And all of these, if we start to see opportunities as, okay, these are ways, if I'm feeling stuck and I find the opportunities that are happening, I can now start using that opportunity as a way to plan. I can take this opportunity and move it forward. Even when things around me, have you seen that meme with the dog and he's sitting in the fire and it says, everything's fine, right? It might feel that way, but when you see like, oh, wait, there's actually this really great, the phone, we can do dial a story. So you take the opportunity that you saw and now how do I move that forward? And you can start strategizing about how to move the opportunity forward, which is one less way of being reactive when we come back in. And you might see that your community loves Dial a Story, and now we want to keep Dial a Story even when we are in person and are able to do story time with the littles at the library again. And so I just said all of that stuff. I just, oops, didn't push the button. So any thoughts or questions about how opportunity can be used as a tool to move us forward in uncertain times?
I have something. It's Renee. I'm seeing a little more opportunity to be flexible in many different ways. And a lot of times, especially in children's services, but less so in teens, they're very rigid in what they are doing. It's 3 months out, everything's planned, you know, things are known from, you know, the start of the year, what's going to happen. And they've had to pivot very quickly to maybe week by week and the uncertainty, like you said. And I'm hoping that going forward, that kind of skill that they're learning to be a little more flexible will help. And they're also being flexible with each other. So there's more collaboration.
Beautiful.
So like sometimes a library will have a program and they're like, yeah, anyone can come. We're opening it to everyone, which is like never happens down here in Long Island. It's just very much like you're a taxpayer, you come to this library, you don't go to any other, and that's not happening now. And I really, really hope
that's beautiful.
Virtual kind of thing. We have more teens helping out, you know, virtually because they can do stuff instead of getting to the library. They can't get to the library. So, you know, more opportunity there. I think, you know, when we get on the other side of this, it's going to be a lot of stuff that's permanently better.
Yeah, I hope so. I really hope so. Linda, I saw some stuff in chat. Chat kept coming up.
Yes, well, we got that meme that you were talking about. So Kathy said that's great.
Yes.
A lot of people are agreeing with Renee, and Nicole in Pennsylvania is saying she's enjoying the flexibility, better able to respond to the needs of patrons. And Julia in New Hampshire is saying so many walls breaking down in a good way.
Yeah, so that's really awesome because you're
I meant to mute me and I muted you. Now you're back.
If you're able to think about the ways in which you've moved these opportunities forward, you have, and I know I get it. I feel like, oh my gosh, for so long we were in this reactionary mode, and there will be still some times through this where we'll be reacting. But the more that we can use the tool of opportunity and, oh, here's this great opportunity, how do we move that forward? We become less reactionary. The more we operate out of a reactionary space, the more anxious our brain gets. And it doesn't really process things the way we'd hope for it to. Yeah, we have about 17 minutes and we're at embracing the knowns as a tool. So even in times of uncertainty, we have some knowns. They manifest themselves in different ways, but there are some knowns. Embracing the knowns can really ground us and help us feel safe and secure. And when we feel safe and secure, then we are a little more able to think a little more clearly about, okay, what do I really need to do? If I know this one thing, what can I do with this one thing? How can I latch on to this and move this piece forward? There's a sense of control there and a sense of I'm not powerless in this. So it helps us find where our power is as well, and allows us to move forward. If you have paper with you, we're going to do an activity, and Linda and I talked about this, and it might move forward in some of your calls. And if we don't get through it all, you'll just be able to maybe think about doing this activity as you move forward. So we're going to take a moment to think about your programming and the knowns that are before you. So my example is, I know my state is planning to reopen school in the fall with some staggered class times. They're not sure what that's going to look like. We're not even sure if that will happen, but we're planning for a fall reopening. We know that social distancing is going to be in place when that happens. The schools will be opening with distancing procedures and methods. I can't run my in-person mentoring program. I can't have a mentor and a mentee sitting 6 feet apart from each other. That's just not going to work. So I know that. I know that I'm not going to be able to run my in-person programming when fall starts as typical. So I need to start thinking about something. This known gives me some grounding because I know now, okay, I need to start preparing for enhancing my online mentoring program. And I need to start thinking about, are there ways that I maybe can have my mentors on the computer and have my scholars come into my mentoring space, and the scholars physically there, but the mentors on the computer? So it gives me some things to work with. What might you do with this known? How might it help you start planning and moving forward? So this is giving me some structures and some things to think about. And it's helping me think about what permissions might I need to go through our Seattle University legal department, for example, that I can start preparing for now. And in hopes of moving forward in the fall. What will family engagement look like? We have family and mentor nights when we first start programming. So what might that look like? Are things that I can start thinking and planning and putting in place. So what your known is that you're going to work with should be something that you feel comfortable actually exploring and trying and sharing about in your check-ins. Linda may be asking you, how's that known going? And then you'll be able to provide support to each other throughout the process. So if you have paper and pen with you, go ahead and write down what your known is. You can also share your known out in the chat if you're interested, just what your known is. And then how does that known impact your work right now? Does it give you framing for something? Does it help you clarify scheduling? And you're not going to do it right now because we only have about 11 minutes with each other. But my invitation to you is to devise a plan to address the known that you're working with. So what is already in place? Are there already policies or procedures that might help move you forward? Do you have a legal department that you might need to run some things by? Are there community groups with whom you can work to support each other in moving forward your known? And so, for example, we partner with the Parks Department at the middle school I work with, and he's the coordinator for that is working on summer programming. And we had a call and he's trying to figure out how might we do some live classes, live virtual classes. And so we're thinking about, can we have SU students do live Zumba classes for a summer program? So what's already in place is we've got students, we've got some technology that's in place. The partnership is in place. Trial and error and evaluation. We already do those things all the time, but that's part of working with your known. We have to try things so that we can learn from them. It might not work. Okay, what didn't work and how might it work? Was it just not a good fit right now, but it might fit in the future? And then how am I evaluating this? So with my e-mentoring program that's still in its pilot stage, we are asking mentors, families, and scholars for insight, what's working for you, what's not working for you, how can Miss LaKesha make this a better experience for you, and just getting some verbal feedback evaluation. Once you're comfortable with this, the known that you're working on, once you're comfortable devising a plan to address it, then you're going to add another known to the equation. And you're going to start, and it could just be expanding the known that you're already working with. But this is, as you start stringing them together and as you start working with your knowns, there's still uncertainty around you, but you now have power over something. You have power with this known. You have power with organizations in your community. You're sharing power and you're finding and tapping into your power within and creating space for your scholars and your families and your colleagues to tap into their power within. And then you're moving forward even in uncertain times. And you're going to be better equipped to be a little less reactionary when we do have that time of our young people coming back to us. Maybe it's 5 at a time. That's our governor's plan for phase 2, 5 people with distancing, and then he's increasing that. We're not there yet. We're still in phase 1. But though that's one way on how we might be able to move forward and feel a little less stuck, because we want to also face it. We don't know how long this will be. We don't know if we'll be able to be in person with some of our youth and families and young people. And then that prediction that they're having of a spike in the fall or the winter might send us back to 2 or 3 weeks of stay home, stay safe. Well, we've already got these great tools and things that we've put in place so we can fall back on them. We're not reacting to that anymore, right? Now we're thinking is how do we be a little less reactionary when we get to that in-person stage? And if we start working with the knowns that we have and devising plans for them, it gets us a little closer. And we're also holding that known might change or shift, but you still have a plan or a structure, a framework in place to shift as your known might shift. So I want to invite thoughts and questions around that idea or concept of working with the known.
I said it in the chat, but I don't mind saying it again out loud, that a lot of libraries, and my library included, we are canceling all in-person programs for like the foreseeable future. Everything's canceled in person, which can be very hard, especially for our population, because a lot of them don't have access to computers. But what we are trying to do, I've been trying to reach out to my teens for a while. I'm trying to run Dungeons and Dragons over cell phones. So if that's the way we have to do it, that's the way we have to do it. And thankfully, there is a wealth of information out there for Dungeons and Dragons virtually. And I've been parts of games that are virtual for a very long time. So it's easier to shift just this one program. I don't know what the other programs are doing, but that's the known and that's the solution I have.
Yeah, that's perfect, because as things go on, another known will eventually come up for you, right? You can work with only with what you know right now, and then look to see the patterns as they start to progress.
And I'll just say that Renee said it's a great place to start. What do you know? And then Ruth said it's a really good perspective shift from reaction to acting, because we have already done all this before when the second wave hits. I'm going to share this tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah. I quickly, we have 5 minutes, and so I didn't do the imagine piece, but this time also gives us, and I think I heard someone say rebirth, and I love that. But it gives us a time to reimagine, and so I'll just quickly kind of share this, that what might be, and this is something you can think about and maybe put on the side of your knowns. You might have a list of opportunities and a list of things you can reimagine. And then as you are seeing patterns, you might see some of your opportunities they're starting to become knowns for you, or you're starting to be able to see how to shift those into ideas for programming. But what might be things that you want to reimagine? Are there ways of the scheduling piece that Amber talked about, reimagining that piece. That's really awesome. Use your knowns to help you reimagine. And then think about what that process might be and whose voices are at the table as you're reimagining and whose voices aren't, and how can you get those voices there to the table with you as you're reimagining. One thing as we're reimagining, and I'm hoping that just across the globe, we're realizing that this time of COVID has really heightened a lot of things that we already knew or that people were already experiencing. And so how do we help reimagine what it can look like to build safe space? How do we reimagine what it can look like to build a trusting norm? Because some of those things are definitely, especially for our youth and young people, they may or may not be able to articulate that will be a need for them. And then just to remember that you have an invitation to hold that you have been in uncertain times before. You've been there, and that you honestly have all the tools that you need to navigate. You might need to dust them off. You might call them something different. And you can always add tools to your kit, or you can add paints to your palette, whatever metaphor works best for you. But to remember that you've experienced uncertainty in your life before. So start thinking about what are some of those tools that you used in those other times. That this time is probably, and at least for me, I'll speak for myself, has really asked me to use muscles that I haven't used in a while. And so, or ever, and that's okay. That it's okay to use those muscles. And if you're using them for the first time in a long time or for the first time ever, they might be really sore afterwards. And that might be some of that fatigue. Of course you're fatigued, you're using new muscles, right? And that's okay. And to hold that, of course, this is challenging and uncomfortable. And sorry for my misspell on new. And that we're navigating uncharted waters. We only have 2 minutes left, and I want to honor that. But I just want to see if there are anybody have any last minute thoughts or questions. The reflection you can do kind of within yourself, or type in the box, but something that you might leave with to take away from today, and something you might leave in this space once the Zoom call is over. Like, I'm going to leave guilt in this space. It's okay to feel my feelings. And I'm going to take away with me using the known. So we might not share that out right now, but my invitation is for you to think about what you might leave in the Zoom space today.
Well, and I'll just say that Leah said she's struggling with letting go of in-person connections as being better. And I think that's really, that idea of something being better from the old world to the new world is a really interesting
yes
for me and
yes
Leah, and maybe others as well.
Yes.
We're getting resistance. Leah, is that what you're leaving behind?
Trying.
And reaction to
Yeah,
action.
awesome.
Julia is saying reaction to action.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I know we are maybe a few seconds from at time, but I do want to thank you for allowing me in your space again. Again, it's always awesome to be here with you and to share with you and to hear what you're thinking and what you're doing. We took field trips to the library, my mom, my brother, and I, all the time, and libraries are some of my favorite spaces. So I just love sharing space and time with you all. Yeah.
And we are so lucky that you are here with us. I mean, every time you're here, I'm like, oh my gosh, thank goodness for LaKesha. I just really appreciate your take on all of this and working through these things with us, and then me as we talk about the meetings. So thank you so much. And people are saying, yes, this is so helpful.
Oh, I'm so glad. Thank you.
Really, really amazing. And I do want to say that LaKesha and I just 2 days ago had a Zoom call where, and I know time is up, but where we're like, okay, how's this exactly? What are we going to do? And we threw out some ideas, and the way you all put it together, what you put it all together was amazing. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank
Really
you.
appreciate it. Thank you all. We will come back to the knowns. I think that could be really helpful for moving forward for all of us. So I'll definitely make sure we come back to that. Have good rest of your weeks, everyone. Thank you again, LaKesha, and I'll be seeing everybody really soon. Enjoy the beach, Renee. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Thank you, LaKesha.
Thank you so much. You're welcome. Thank you.